I never thought something as simple as a tattoo appointment would change the way I saw myself, or someone else. But it did, and it all started with a scar I couldn't stand looking at anymore. It ran along the left side of my ribs, about 6 inches long, slightly raised and pale. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was a reminder. One stupid fall during a hike, one poorly placed rock, one metal trail sign I slammed into on the way down. 10 stitches and 2 weeks of pain later, I was left with this permanent slash on my body. At first, I told myself I didn't care. But over time, I started avoiding mirrors. I stopped going shirtless at the beach. I even backed out of a couple of hookups because I couldn't bear the thought of someone's fingers grazing it. So yeah, eventually I decided, if I couldn't erase the scar, I'd cover it. I found a shop that specialized in scar work, one with a solid portfolio and tons of good reviews. The artist's name was Ian. That's all the website said. No last name, no photo, just a few images of intricate ink spread across skin that had clearly been through something. The place was tucked between a bakery and a bookstore on a quiet block near downtown. It didn't have a flashy sign or a trendy neon logo, just a matte black door with a brass knocker shaped like a rose. I walked in early on a Thursday afternoon, nerves buzzing in my stomach. The smell hit me first: ink, leather, and something herbal, maybe eucalyptus. The space was clean, warm, not sterile like I'd feared. Art lined the walls, all original designs, no flash sheets, no Pinterest copies. Then I saw him. Ian. He looked nothing like I expected. Most tattoo artists I'd met before had the tough, tatted-up biker look or the artsy, bearded hipster vibe. Ian was different, late 20s maybe. Clean-shaven, with sharp features and a jawline that looked like it had been carved out of stone. His black t-shirt clung to his arms, which were covered in ink, but not flashy designs. His tattoos were subtle, fine-line work. One sleeve was made entirely of delicate constellations and phrases in Latin I couldn't read. "You're Ezra?" he asked, his voice low with just a hint of a rasp. "Yeah," I said, trying not to sound as thrown off as I felt. "I made the appointment online. For a cover-up." He smiled faintly and nodded. "Come back. Let's take a look." He led me past the reception desk into one of the back rooms. It was cozy but minimal. Just a chair, a small table with neatly organized equipment, and a massive window letting in soft natural light. "Shirt off," he said gently, already pulling on gloves. "I won't touch anything yet. Just want to see what we're working with." I hesitated for a beat, then pulled off my shirt and turned slightly to show him the scar. He crouched next to me, close but not too close. His eyes moved over the skin like he was reading something, not judging it. I was so used to people flinching or pretending not to stare. Ian didn't do either. "You mind if I ask what happened?" he asked after a moment. "Fell during a hike," I said. "Cracked a rib and got impaled on a signpost. Real graceful." He smiled again, this time more to himself. "You're lucky." "Lucky's not the word I'd use." Ian stood and peeled off his gloves. "It's a clean scar. We can work with it. I have a few ideas, but I want to know how you want to feel about it when it's done. Like, what do you want this to say?" I looked at him. I want to stop feeling ashamed of it. He nodded slowly, like he got that on a level deeper than words. "All right," he said. "I'll sketch something tonight. If you're open to it, I want to do something that doesn't just hide it, but reframes it. Make it part of something else." "Yeah," I said quietly. "That's what I want too." He handed me a sheet of aftercare tips, even though we hadn't started yet. "Tomorrow at 3, we'll get into it." And just like that, I left. But that night, I couldn't stop thinking about him. Not just the design, or the scar, or the whole reason I was doing this, but Ian, the way he'd looked at me. Not like I was broken, not like I needed fixing, just like I was a blank canvas. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was nervous about the tattoo. That part one could handle. It was something else. Something about the way Ian had looked at me. The quiet focus in his eyes. The way he hadn't hesitated to get close, but also hadn't made it weird. Like he'd done this 100 times, but still treated it like something personal. I kept replaying that moment. Me shirtless in that studio chair, the scar exposed, and him crouched beside me, totally unfazed. It had been a long time since anyone had looked at that part of me and not winced or pretended they didn't see it. The next day, I got there 5 minutes early. The same soft smell hit me when I walked in, ink and eucalyptus, and the same quiet calm settled over the space. Ian looked up from his tablet at the front desk and gave me a nod. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be," I said. He led me back to the same room. This time, the sketch was already pinned to the wall, a flowing design that started high on my ribs and curled around the scar like ivy climbing a tree trunk. But it wasn't overly floral. It had weight to it. Some of the lines were sharp, angular, almost geometric, balanced with softer curves. "It doesn't hide the scar completely," he said, standing next to me, arms crossed. "But it reframes it, makes it part of the design instead of burying it." I stared at it, unable to say anything at first. "This is," I finally managed. "Damn." He smiled, just a little. "Good?" "Really good." "Cool," he said, already setting up his station. "Let's make it real." I took my shirt off again, this time with less hesitation. I sat in the chair and adjusted until he was happy with my position, then laid back as he prepped my skin and transferred the stencil. "This your first piece?" "No," I said. "Got a small one on my ankle in college. Drunk decision. Doesn't count." He chuckled softly. "They all count, just some more than others." Once everything was ready, he sat down beside me, gloves on, machine buzzing. He paused, hovering just above my skin. "Deep breath," he said. I did. And then the needle touched down. The first few minutes were always the worst. The sharp burn of skin being broken, the repetition of the motion. But Ian worked steadily, his pressure consistent, his movements fluid. He checked in every so often, asking if I needed a break or water, but I kept shaking my head. The pain wasn't bothering me. I was focused on him. There was something almost intimate about it. His arm brushed against my side as he worked, and each time it did, my breath hitched. He'd lean in to get a better angle, and I'd feel the warmth of his body close to mine. I knew it was just the job, just the proximity of the space, but it still did something to me. At one point, maybe an hour in, he paused and stretched his hands. "Scar tissue's tougher," he said, "but you're doing fine." "It doesn't feel as bad as I thought," I admitted. "It's weird, right? People think tattoos hurt more over scars. Sometimes they do. But other times, it's like the nerve endings are dulled. Doesn't hit the same." I nodded, unsure how to respond. My brain wasn't really focused on the medical part of it. "You're doing good," he added, quieter this time. His eyes met mine again, and for a second, just a second, I thought I saw something in them. Something softer. Like he wasn't just talking about the tattoo anymore. When he went back to work, I found myself hyper-aware of every place our bodies almost touched. My side tingled, not just from the ink, but from the nearness of him. 2 hours in, he pulled back and said, "All right, take a look." I sat up slowly and walked over to the mirror. What I saw made my chest tighten. The scar was still there, but now it was part of something else. Something alive. The ivy wrapped around it like it had always belonged. It didn't feel like a flaw anymore. It felt like a story. "Holy shit," I said, my voice lower than I expected. "You like it? I think I love it." He smiled, pulling off his gloves. "I'll wrap you up, but once it's healed, come back. I want to see how it settles." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I will." As he cleaned the area and applied the wrap, his fingers moved gently, but there was something else in the way he touched me. It wasn't just professional anymore. It lingered. "You did good," he said again, his voice barely above a whisper. "You said that already." "Yeah," he said, looking up at me. "But I meant it differently this time." And just like that, he turned away to clean his station, leaving me standing there with a heart pounding harder than it should have been. I left with more than a tattoo. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was hiding anything. I kept replaying his words the whole way home. I meant it differently this time, the way Ian had said it. Quiet, deliberate, stuck in my head like a lyric I couldn't shake. He wasn't just talking about my pain tolerance or how I'd handled the session. It was something more. I just didn't know what. Over the next few days, I followed the aftercare routine religiously. Cleaned it, moisturized it, avoided the sun. Every time I peeled back the wrap or looked at myself in the mirror, I felt lighter. Not just because the tattoo looked amazing, but because the scar didn't feel like this ugly, lonely secret anymore. It felt like part of a bigger picture. Still, I didn't expect to see Ian again until the touch-up. So when his name popped up on my phone 1 week later, I stared at the screen for a solid 10 seconds before answering. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Hey, Ezra, sorry to bug you. Just checking in. How's the piece healing?" "Oh, good. Looks clean, no redness or scabbing. Still a little tender, but nothing bad." "Awesome," he said. I could hear him exhale through the receiver, like he'd been holding his breath. "You were one of the better heels I've seen, honestly." I laughed softly. I'm kind of a rule follower. I didn't want to mess it up. "Hey, I'll take a rule follower over a guy who goes swimming with a fresh piece any day." There was a pause. Not awkward, just quiet, like neither of us knew how to get to whatever this was supposed to be. Then he said, "I was wondering if you're free this weekend. I'm hosting a little get-together. Nothing crazy, just a few friends, some drinks, maybe music. Thought I'd throw it out there." My pulse jumped. "At the shop?" "No, my place. I live above the studio, actually. Got the whole top floor. Not as sketchy as it sounds." I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "That's not sketchy. It's very artist in residence." "Exactly," he said, and I could hear the grin in his voice. "So, you in?" I hesitated for a second, not because I didn't want to go, but because I wasn't sure what it meant. But then again, maybe that was the point. To find out. "Yeah," I said. "I'm in. Cool, I'll text you the details." When I hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed for a minute, just staring at my phone. I didn't know what kind of night I was walking into, but I knew one thing. I wasn't just another client. Saturday night, I climbed the narrow staircase at the side of the shop, following the music and muffled voices up to the second floor. The door at the top was open, and light spilled out into the hallway, warm, golden, inviting. Inside, the space was nothing like I expected. High ceilings, brick walls, shelves full of books and vinyl records. A few people I didn't recognize were lounging around the open kitchen, drinks in hand, laughing like they'd known each other for years. And then I saw Ian. He was in jeans and a plain dark hoodie, barefoot, sipping something out of a whiskey glass. He looked up, spotted me, and that smile spread across his face again, slow and real, like it started in his eyes and worked its way down. "Hey, glad you came," he said, walking over. "Me too," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. He handed me a drink. "This is Ezra, everyone," he said, nodding toward the group. "He's the guy who actually followed my aftercare directions." A few chuckles. Someone raised their glass. I gave a little wave, but Ian didn't leave me standing there awkwardly. He guided me toward the window seat near the back, away from the noise. "I figured you might appreciate the quiet corner," he said. "Am I that obvious?" "Little bit," he said, sitting next to me, our knees almost touching. But in a good way. For a while, we just talked about tattoos, writing, music. He was funny in a low-key, dry kind of way. And when he listened, he really listened. No fake smiles or distracted nods. At some point, the conversation shifted. "You seemed different when you came in last week," he said. "How so?" "Like you were expecting it to be just another tattoo," he said, his voice lower now. "But it wasn't. Not for you. Not for me either." My chest tightened. "I guess I thought I was going in to fix something," I said slowly. but it kind of feels like I started something instead." He didn't say anything at first. Just looked at me, his expression softer now. "Sometimes we mark the skin to remember pain," he said. "Other times, to let it go." And which one was mine? "Maybe both," he said. Then he reached out, carefully, and let his hand rest on my knee. Not demanding, not forward, just there. And I didn't move away. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Not in spite of the scar, but because of it. Because someone had looked past it, through it, and into me, and maybe left a mark of his own. After that moment, his hand on my knee, my body still, everything shifted. Not dramatically, not loudly. It was like the air between us had thickened into something quieter, more charged. Like every second suddenly had weight. We sat there like that for a few minutes, not speaking, just looking out the window as the city pulsed below us. The party buzzed on in the background, muffled laughter, a distant clink of glasses, a guitar strumming somewhere from the kitchen. But it all felt far away. "You okay?" he asked. I turned toward him. "Yeah," I said. I didn't expect any of this." He smiled, a little crooked. "Me neither." Ian's thumb moved slightly, a subtle press against my jeans. It wasn't even a caress, just contact, just presence. I didn't know what I was supposed to do next, if there even was a supposed to here, but my hand found his, slowly, fingers brushing over his knuckles before curling into the spaces between. I expected him to flinch, maybe shift back into something more neutral, but he didn't. "I'm not great at this," I said quietly. "At what?" "Knowing when someone's interested, or if I'm reading into something I want to see." He nodded like he understood. "I get that." Another pause. And then, softer, "But you're not reading into anything." My chest tightened again, in a different way this time. Like maybe I'd been holding a breath for a year and didn't know it until now. The rest of the night passed in a blur. We didn't kiss. We didn't even hug goodbye. But when I left, his hand slid down my back in a slow, unhurried line that said, "This isn't done." And it wasn't. Over the next couple weeks, Ian and I started texting. It wasn't nonstop, but it was steady. Thoughtful check-ins. Little jokes. Photos of dumb stuff, me burning toast, him fixing a blown fuse in the studio with a headlamp and a mug of coffee. He started calling me Rules Guy after I told him I'd set a calendar alert for my touch-up appointment. I called him Ink Dad once after he scolded me for scratching at a healing edge, and he claimed to hate it, but I knew he didn't. By the time my follow-up appointment came around, it wasn't just about the tattoo anymore. I walked into the studio that Thursday afternoon feeling more nervous than I had the first time. My palms were weirdly damp. My heart was doing this annoying thump-thump thing like I was going on a first date, even though we were technically just meeting for ink. He greeted me at the door, smile already in place, hair messier than usual. Still following instructions? He asked, pretending to inspect my side like a coach checking a player for injuries. "You know me," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. Obsessively compliant. He chuckled and led me back to the same chair. "This'll be easy. Just some light touch-up on the lower lines where the scar dips." I nodded and took my shirt off again, less hesitant now, but still aware of the exposure. Ian didn't say much as he worked. The buzz of the machine filled the space between us, but it didn't feel empty. It felt like a conversation we didn't need to say out loud. When he finished, he wiped the area gently and set the machine down. "All good, healed beautifully." I sat up, still facing away from him, still shirtless. Then, after a pause, I asked, "Can I ask you something kind of stupid?" He leaned against the table behind me. "You're a loud one." I turned slightly so I could see him. "Was that night at your place? Was that just a moment? Or is there more to this?" His expression softened immediately. He looked down at the floor, then back at me. "It wasn't just a moment," he said. "At least not for me." I nodded, something loosening in my chest. Then he stepped closer. "Ezra." he said, and this time his voice was quieter, heavier. I've never mixed clients and personal stuff before. Ever. I looked at him. But you want to? He nodded. Yeah, I do. And this time, when he touched me, it wasn't just the gentle pat of reassurance. His hand slid up my side, fingers brushing the healed lines of ink, thumb pressing softly into the edge of the design that curled around the scar. You ever think, he said, voice barely above a whisper, that maybe the parts we try hardest to hide are the ones people end up loving the most? My throat went dry. Yeah, I said. I'm starting to. He leaned in, slower than slow, giving me every second to back away. I didn't. And when our lips finally met, quiet, tentative, real, it felt like the first time someone had touched me without looking past the scar. He didn't erase it. He didn't fix it. He just made space for it. The kiss didn't last long. It wasn't the kind of thing you see in movies, all urgent hands and heavy breathing. It was quiet, still, almost like neither of us wanted to break it because we both knew what it meant. Something was starting. Something real. And once it started, there was no undoing it. When we pulled apart, Ian didn't say anything right away. He just looked at me, really looked at me. His thumb still rested near my ribs, over the tail end of the tattoo, where the design faded into nothing. I should probably say something cool right now, he murmured. You already did, I replied. That made him smile, the kind that showed just the edge of his teeth. I reached down to grab my shirt, not because I was uncomfortable, but because the silence was making me fidgety. I slipped it back over my head and turned to face him again. So what now? I asked. He shrugged, leaning back against the counter. Now we pretend I didn't kiss a client, I raised an eyebrow. I'm pretty sure that ship sailed. Yeah, he admitted. You're right. There was a pause, but it wasn't awkward. It was more like a decision hovering between us. You want to get a drink? He asked. Or food? Or, I don't know, walk around and pretend we're both not low-key freaking out about this? I laughed. That sounds about right. We ended up at a bar a few blocks from the shop. One of those quiet places with vintage lighting, deep booths, and a guy playing acoustic covers in the corner that no one was actually listening to. Ian ordered bourbon, neat. I got a beer I couldn't pronounce. So, he said, once we settled in, tell me something you wouldn't have told me last week. Like what? Like something that has nothing to do with tattoos or scars, I thought for a second. All right, I used to be really into figure skating. Not, like, competitively, but I took lessons until I was 16. Quit because my dad said it was a waste of time. Ian blinked. You're serious? Dead serious. I had my own skates and everything. I was kinda good too. He leaned back, genuinely impressed. Okay, that's a hell of a reveal. Your turn. He tapped his glass. I used to be a church kid. I blinked. No way. Yep. Southern Baptist. Wednesday youth group, Sunday morning service, choir practice. I leaned forward, grinning. What happened? He smirked. Realized I was gay. And also maybe didn't believe in hell. I laughed harder than I should have. He grinned back, and for the next hour we traded pieces of ourselves like cards. Dumb stories. Childhood obsessions. Things we didn't usually say out loud. It felt easy. Effortless, even. Like we'd skip the part where you pretend to be cooler than you are, and just dropped straight into the good stuff. At one point, he looked at me for a long beat and said, You know, this doesn't feel like a first anything. I know, I said. It feels like we're picking something up. Exactly. Over the next few weeks, things unfolded slowly. Deliberately. We didn't dive into anything. No rushing to define what we were. But we saw each other. Often. He'd text me in the middle of the day just to send a photo of a dog he saw on the street, or some new ink he was sketching. I'd swing by the shop just to say hey and end up staying an hour, sitting behind the counter while he worked on designs. It was new, but it wasn't unsure. Every time we were in the same room, there was this quiet current running underneath everything we said. A sense that whatever we were building wasn't fragile. It was steady. grown slowly, layer by layer, like ink sinking into skin. And then came the night I stayed over for the first time. Not because we planned it. I'd just stopped by late after work. We ate leftovers on his couch, watched a movie neither of us paid attention to, and when I stood up to leave, he said, "You don't have to go." I didn't. We lay in his bed, side by side, not touching at first, just breathing the same air. My hand found his under the sheets, and he laced our fingers without hesitation. After a while, he rolled onto his side and pushed my shirt up gently, his fingers tracing the healed edges of the tattoo. "It still feels warm," he said. "Sometimes it does," I replied, "like it remembers." "I like that," he murmured. "Scars that remember." He kissed me again. Deeper this time, slower. And it wasn't about chillin', it wasn't about anything we needed to prove, it was just about being there. Fully, present, unhidden. When we finally fell asleep, I realized something I hadn't thought about since the first day I walked into his shop. I hadn't felt ashamed of my scar in weeks. I didn't mean to fall asleep at Ian's place, but I didn't try to stop it either. And when I woke up the next morning, sun breaking through the half-closed blinds and pooling across the sheets, he was still there, still asleep beside me, breathing slow and even, one hand resting lightly on my hip like his body hadn't gotten the message that the night was over. I didn't move right away. I just lay there and watched him, soaking in the quiet. In the soft stubble on his jaw, the tattoo ink peeking from under his sleeve, the little scar near his collarbone I'd never noticed before. Funny how fast someone can go from a stranger to something else entirely, something that matters. Eventually, he stirred. Eyes opened slowly. When he looked at me, he smiled without saying a word. Just a lazy, content grin like waking up next to me was the most natural thing in the world. "Morning," I said softly. "Hey," he murmured back. His voice was low and gravelly, not fully awake. "You always wake up looking like a thoughtful painting?" I rolled my eyes. "You're such a flirt." "You're still here," he said, brushing a thumb along my side. "That feels good." "Yeah," I said. "It does." We didn't rush to get up. We stayed in bed too long, stealing small kisses, letting conversation drift in and out. At some point, he got up to make coffee and handed me one of his hoodies to wear. I padded barefoot into the kitchen, watching him move around like this was just another morning, but knowing it wasn't, because something was happening between us, something real. Over the next month, we became us. There was no defining the relationship moment, no Instagram post, no group chat update. We didn't need any of that. It showed in the way he always pulled me closer on the couch without saying a word, or the way he started leaving a toothbrush for me at his place, or how I stopped setting alarms when I slept over, because I knew waking up next to him was better than anything I'd planned. I still worked my 9 to 5, he still spent long hours designing Flash or doing walk-ins at the shop. But we started building routines around each other in that quiet, unspoken way. Texts turned into dinners, dinners turned into sleepovers, and eventually it just felt weird not to end the day with him. But what caught me off guard the most was how naturally my own relationship with my body started to shift too. I stopped flinching at mirrors. I wore tank tops again. I even let a friend photograph me shirtless for a creative shoot she was doing. Not because I forgot the scar was there, but because I didn't care if it was. One night, I asked Ian if he ever thought about what that first session meant for him, if it had felt different from the beginning. He looked at me for a long second, then said, "Yeah, I noticed you before I touched you." "What does that mean?" "It means I saw you walk in with this weight on your shoulders. Like the scar wasn't just on your body. It was on your face, your posture, your words. You wanted a cover-up, but it felt like you really wanted permission. Permission for what?" "To start again," he said. "To stop hiding." I swallowed. "And you think a tattoo did that?" He shrugged. "I think you did that. I just helped you see it." I reached for his hand across the couch. "You did more than help." His fingers tightened around mine. "You're not the same guy who walked into my shop, Ezra." "No," I said, "but I think that guy had to exist so I could get here." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, and I'm glad he did." That night, when we crawled into bed, I didn't reach for the covers right away. I let my shirt fall to the floor. I didn't turn off the light. I lay beside Ian, bare-chested, scar exposed, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt completely seen. He leaned over, lips brushing the ink near my ribs, and whispered, "You're beautiful here." And I believed him. Not because I wanted to, but because he was right. That was the night everything quieted down inside me. Not just in that moment with Ian, in his bed, with his lips warm against my skin, but in my own mind. The noise I used to carry with me, the doubt, the second-guessing, the shame I hadn't realized I wore like a second layer of clothing. It wasn't gone, but it had softened, muted, like background static that no longer controlled the volume. I started noticing how much of myself I'd been holding back, not just physically, but in every part of my life. I used to avoid eye contact in locker rooms, turn sideways when I changed shirts, sit with a pillow across my chest when I lounged on someone's couch. But Ian never looked away from me. And slowly, I stopped looking away from myself. One Saturday, I stopped by the shop just before closing. It was raining lightly, the kind of drizzle that slicks the streets without soaking your shoes. Ian was alone, cleaning up, hoodie sleeves pushed to his elbows, earbuds in as he wiped down his workstation. He looked up and smiled when he saw me. "You stalking me now?" "Guilty," I said, shaking off my jacket. "You got a minute?" "For you?" "Always." I walked over and leaned against the table he was disinfecting. "So, I've been thinking." That's usually my line. "I want another tattoo," I said. His eyebrows lifted. "Already?" "Yeah, but not on the scar. Somewhere else." "All right," he said slowly. "What are you thinking?" I hesitated, then reached into my jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I'd been sketching it during work meetings for over a week. Not a finished design, just a rough concept. A pair of hands, palms open, one reaching toward the other. Simple, clean. He studied it for a long moment. "You drew this?" "Yeah, I know it's not perfect." "No," he said. "It's perfect in exactly the way it should be." I felt heat rush to my face, unexpected and stupidly satisfying. "Where do you want it?" "Here," I said, pointing to the inside of my upper arm. "Somewhere. I'll feel it when I move," he nodded. "We can do that." Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "You know, when you first came in, I didn't think we'd end up here." "Me either. But I'm really glad we did." We booked the session for the following week. And when I showed up, it felt different than the first time. Not because I wasn't nervous. I was. But this time, I knew what I was walking into. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was adding to something. Building forward. As he worked, Ian talked quietly. Not small talk. Real talk. About how he used to think he'd never date someone who had a scar from trauma, because he was scared of saying the wrong thing. And about how being with me changed that. How he learned that you don't have to fix someone to love them. You just have to be willing to stand still beside their pain and not flinch. When he finished, I looked at the tattoo in the mirror. The hands. Open. Reaching. Just like the first night we'd sat on his window bench, knees nearly touching, wondering if this was something real. "Looks like it's saying something," he said. "It is," I replied. "It's saying I'm not afraid to be seen anymore." He stepped behind me, rested his chin on my shoulder, and whispered, "I never wanted you to be." Later that night, we lay in bed, both of us worn out from the session and the week, the city humming through the windows. Ian traced my new tattoo with his fingertips, and then let his hand drift down, curling gently over my ribs where the old scar now lived beneath the ink. "Still think about it?" he asked. "Sometimes." "And now?" I rolled to face him. "Now I think about how it brought me here." He nodded, eyes soft. "Then I'm glad it's part of your story." "Me too." I kissed him, slow and certain. And when we fell asleep, legs tangled, Skin touching, hearts quiet. I finally understood something I hadn't before. The scar didn't disappear, it just stopped defining me. It's been 6 months now. The scar is still there, faded slightly, softened by time and care, and the ink that frames it like part of a painting. It's no longer the first thing I notice when I take off my shirt. And more importantly, it's not the thing that decides how I feel about myself anymore. Sometimes, I catch Ian tracing it absent-mindedly when we're watching a movie or lying in bed. He doesn't do it like he's studying it. It's not some symbolic gesture every time. Most of the time, it's just his hand, resting there like he forgot it ever meant anything other than home. We've settled into something real. And yeah, it's still new in some ways. Still learning how to fight without blowing things up, how to be vulnerable without turning everything into a confession. But there's trust now, and that's new for both of us. He still calls me rules guy when I'm being too organized, and I still tease him for being a secret romantic disguised as a tattooed stoic. We split groceries, share Spotify playlists, leave notes for each other that are half sweet and half sarcastic. One time, he left me a sketch of a cartoon wolf wrapped in ivy with a little speech bubble that said, "You survived, now thrive." It's taped to our fridge. One night, a few weeks ago, we were walking home from a dinner with his friends. Nothing fancy, just tacos and drinks and too much laughter. And out of nowhere, Ian stopped and said, "Hey, can I ask you something?" "Of course. If you hadn't come in for the scar, if you never needed the cover-up, do you think we'd have met another way?" I looked at him, really looked at him, hands in his pockets, hair messy from the wind, that faint crease between his eyebrows that shows up when he's thinking too hard. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I'm glad I had a reason to walk in that day." He smiled at that. Me too. We stood there under a flickering street lamp, the air cool and still, the city quiet around us. And for a second, I thought about how weird it is that something you used to hate about yourself can lead you to something, or someone, you didn't even know you needed. If you'd told me a year ago that I'd fall in love with the guy who tattooed my trauma, I would have laughed. But Ian didn't tattoo over my pain. He honored it. He framed it. And in doing that, he gave me the space to become someone who doesn't flinch at his reflection anymore. He left a mark, all right, just not the one I expected.